This week we'll be studying chapter 16. Listen now to John as he reads chapter 16.
Revelation 16, verses 1 to 3, New King James Version, verse 1. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the seven angels, "Go and pour out the bowls of the wrath of God on the earth." Verse 2. So the first went and poured out his bowl upon the earth, and a foul and loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. Verse 3. Then the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became blood as of a dead man, and every living creature in the sea died.
My interpretation of Revelation 16, 1-3, beginning with verse 1, the command. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the seven angels, "Go and pour out the bowls of the wrath of God on the earth." The loud voice from the temple must be God himself, as no one else could enter the temple. Revelation 15:8. This voice commands the seven angels to pour out the bowls of God's wrath on the earth. I emphasize that these bowls represent the third woe described in Revelation 11:14, and are both chastisements meant to bring repentance and punishments to dispense justice. Note the parallels with the plagues of Egypt during the Exodus, such as boils, Exodus 9:8-12, waters turning to blood, Exodus 7:14-25, and darkness, Exodus 10:21-29. I contend that these judgments are not symbolic, but real and terrifying.
Thanks, Dave. This verse is an example of the New Testament paralleling the Old Testament. Without a working knowledge of the Old Testament, one could not clearly understand the New Testament, especially the book of Revelation. Now, would anyone like to express their view on this verse? Yes, Aaron.
I also interpret the loud voice as God's command to the seven angels to pour out the vials of his wrath. These vials or bowls, unlike the trumpets, bring swift and sudden destruction, particularly targeting the kingdom of the beast. The first four vials affect the earth, sea, springs, and sun, while the last three are more specific, affecting the throne of the beast, the Euphrates, and the final consummation.
Considering the different views of our two commentators, I want to break down the differences into three separate points. First, focus on symbolism. Second, historical parallels. And third, the interpretation of a voice. The first point is the focus on symbolism. Dave emphasizes the reality and terror of the judgments, arguing against symbolic interpretation. Aaron, on the other hand, points to the literal impact, focusing more on the vial's swift and targeted nature, which is different from the trumpets. Historic parallels. Dave draws direct parallels to the plagues of Egypt, reinforcing the idea of divine retribution, whereas Aaron, on the other hand, emphasizes the distinction between the vials and the trumpets, highlighting their specific targets and effects. The third, interpretation of the voice. Both commentators agree that the voice is God's, but Dave provides more detail on the implications of this being God's direct command. At the same time, Aaron focuses on the broader context of the vial's impact.
I also interpret the loud voice as God's command to the seven angels to pour out the vials of his wrath. These vials or bowls, unlike the trumpets, bring swift and sudden destruction, particularly targeting the kingdom of the beast. The first four vials affect the earth, sea, springs, and sun, while the last three are more specific, affecting the throne of the beast, the Euphrates, and the final consummation.
I agree with Aaron. However, I would like to add the following insight on verse 2. The first bowl judgment results in foul and loathsome sores upon those who have the mark of the beast and worship his image, paralleling the sixth plague of Egypt, where boils afflicted the Egyptians, Exodus 9:8-12. However, I would like to point out that these sores are a direct consequence of worshiping the beast, marking them with God's judgment.
The differences between our two commentators' interpretation are expressed with three focal points: focus on symbolism, history, parallels, and interpretation of judgment. First, the focus on symbolism. Both commentators agree on the literal interpretation of the swords as divine judgment. However, Dave emphasizes the direct consequence of worshiping the beast, while Aaron highlights the followers' spiritual corruption. Second point, historical parallels. Dave directly parallels the Egyptian plagues, reinforcing the idea of divine retribution. Aaron also mentions the Egyptian plagues, but focuses more on the specific targeting of the beast's followers. And finally, the third interpretation of judgment. Dave provides a more detailed explanation of the swords as marks of the God's judgment, while Fausset emphasizes the judgment's spiritual implications on the beast's followers.
Revelation 16:3. Then the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became blood as of a dead man, and every living creature in the sea died. My commentary. The second bowl judgment results in the sea becoming blood, like a dead man, causing every living creature to die. Paralleling the first plague in Egypt, having no life, where the waters turned to blood. Exodus 7:14-25. Summarized as, the Lord turned the waters of the Nile into blood, causing the fish to die and the river to stink. I want to emphasize that this judgment is complete, unlike the partial contamination described in Revelation 8:8-9, where only a third of the sea became blood.
Excellent, Dave. As I have in the past, my commentary of Revelation 16:3 focuses on symbolism. I also interpret the second bowl as turning the sea into blood, but I want to highlight the symbolic nature of this judgment. Note that the sea becoming blood signifies the complete and utter destruction of maritime commerce and the life it supports. I agree with Dave in that this plague parallels the Egyptian plague, Exodus 7:14-25, and emphasizes that this judgment is a direct consequence of the world's sin and rebellion against God.
My comparison of the two comments using the same focus points as before. First, focus on symbolism. Dave emphasizes the judgment's literal and complete nature, while Aaron highlights its symbolic implications, particularly the destruction of maritime commerce. Historical parallels. Both commentators draw parallels to the Egyptian plague, but Dave focuses more on the completeness of the judgment in Revelation than the partial judgment in Exodus 8:8-9. And finally, the interpretation of the judgment. David explains judgment's impact on marine life, while Fausset emphasizes the broader implications for the world's economy and the consequences of sin. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we will be looking at the third bowl that's poured out. I hope you can join us in person this coming week. Fellowship by Middleburg, Florida. Until then.